Tom Fletcher, Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to be here.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to start with Gaza. The IAGS, which is the International Association of Genocide Scholars, have announced this week that they passed a resolution that says, and I'm quoting, "The legal criteria have been met to establish Israel is committing genocide in Gaza." Also, in addition to the IPC last week, determination that what's happening in Gaza is a man-made famine. Now, decisions like these from well-known and accredited organization, and also hopefully an expedited decision by the ICJ on the situation in Gaza, whether it's genocide or not genocide, will that help the international community, the United Nations, organization like yourself, to deal with the situation as it should, with all their facilities and the power they have to save people's lives and prevent the suffering that's taking place?
Well, lawyers and scholars will argue these issues for many years to come. The key thing for us is getting that aid through. As you say, the IPC has been absolutely clear. There is a famine, and it's a famine that we could have prevented and could still prevent. We know how to do this. We need to get 600, 700 trucks moving every day, food, medicine, shelter, and we can stop that famine, and that's the most important thing right now.
Yes. As of yesterday, member states have dispersed about 24% of what is needed to meet the most critical needs. Do you have enough sufficient funds to deal with the situation in Gaza if you were allowed to?
No, we don't. I mean, we've got enormous resources on those borders, at those crossings, that can move through if those impediments are removed. But of course, we need more resources. Globally, we're in this period when massive funding cuts have had to reduce the overall number of those that we can reach across the world with our life-saving support. That's putting immense pressure on our operations. So we can deliver at scale in Gaza and elsewhere, but we do need that funding to come back.
Where are you going to get it from?
Well, I spend a lot of time on the plane, a lot of time visiting donor capitals, potential donor capitals, making the case for what we do, making the case for solidarity and compassion. I believe that there is a whole movement out there of people who will support this work, who don't want to see famine in Gaza, who don't want to see the levels of suffering that we're seeing in Darfur, in Afghanistan, in the DRC, all of these places that I've visited in my first few months in the job, and that will back us, but we keep having to tell those stories and get that message through.
There was a letter signed by 100 humanitarian organizations in mid-August about how they are impeded while delivering the aids in Gaza and the obstacles that they wanted removed to be able to deliver this aid. Has anything improved since that letter and since your appeals to Prime Minister Netanyahu and others to make delivery of aid possible?
So it was a very powerful letter from our colleagues in the humanitarian movement. And of course, we as the UN can't do this alone. We need the NGOs to be allowed that access. They know how to do this at scale. We also need commercial traffic to start moving through. If we're really going to meet the needs of 2 million people across Gaza Strip. Now, we've made those appeals consistently for the restrictions to be removed. What we've seen in the last few weeks, we're getting a few more trucks through, and we're hearing that we may be allowed to get more tents in, but this is a drop in the ocean compared to what's needed. It's just scraping the surface of the needs that are there. We need to be delivering at scale with no impediments, no obstacles, no bureaucracy in our way.
It doesn't seem like it's going to happen with the announcement coming from Israel and the intention of annexing the West Bank and running Gaza and occupying it all over again. It doesn't seem like it.
I mean, these are deeply troubling announcements, clearly. Our hope is, we're listening to our American colleagues who are saying that President Trump has been very clear He wants to see an end to this starvation.
Yes.
He wants the trucks to start moving. He wants the aid to get
Since the
through.
22nd of July, he's been saying that, yes.
He's been saying it very clearly. We've met with Steve Witkoff, the Middle East envoy for the US. And so we will try everything. We will go anywhere, talk to anyone. Here, as elsewhere, if it gets our convoys moving and gets that aid in.
Since October the 7th, 2023, hundreds of humanitarian workers, and some estimates put them at 520, have been killed, many injured in Gaza. Why do you think there is no accountability for humanitarian workers when they're killed, detained, beaten, imprisoned? Why is that? There are people like us and you and everybody else.
And they should be defended to do their work. These are the people, it's like the ambulance workers or the fire workers that we send on our behalf to save lives globally. And, you know, I work with these are my colleagues, and they face immense danger. They do it with huge, huge courage, and yet they are being killed globally in much greater numbers than any time in recorded history. And it is a massive catastrophe, from a situation I'm dealing with right at the moment in Yemen, where our workers are being detained, to Afghanistan, Gaza, where humanitarians are dying in huge numbers, as you say, in Sudan. Everywhere we work, we're facing these threats. And, you know, last year was the worst year ever to be a humanitarian worker. And my fear is that despite the protestations of the world, this year will be even worse. It's an age of impunity, and it's intolerable.
I'd like to move to Sudan. I would like first to commend you, OCHA, in reaching an agreement to keep the Adrar crossing from Chad to Sudan open until the 31st of December. But we all know that Sudan is one of the largest humanitarian crises in the world, and it's getting worse. And diseases like cholera and infectious diseases are spreading. Al-Fashir is a very sad story. It's been besieged for more than 500 days, with about 260,000 people surrounded in Al-Fashir in need of food, medicine. They are starving. Yeah. They're in a very bad shape, and cholera is also spreading there. What can OCHA and others do to reach the civilian in Al-Fashir because of the siege laid by the forces of the RSF?
It's a desperate situation, desperate humanitarian crisis, and by the numbers involved, the worst in the world. It's why I went to Sudan in my first week in the job, to highlight the scale of this challenge. And Al-Fashir, as you say, grim. Violence, displacement, sexual violence, cholera now prevalent, yes. High levels of starvation, high levels of violence against civilians as they flee from multiple waves of conflict, and utterly desperate. So I've spent much of today, as so many days, working on Sudan. I've been meeting with the international NGOs, trying to see what more we can do to support their access on the ground. I've been working on how we secure much greater access for our UN humanitarians to Al-Fashir, to Tawila, for example. I've been meeting with our new humanitarian coordinator, who is fantastic, a great experienced humanitarian, who's going out in the coming days to lead that collective humanitarian effort. And I'll be working the phones to the regional parties, the players, those in country. Again, doing everything possible to get us the access that we need to those civilians, because the situation is utterly desperate. And we need money. Here as elsewhere, I have to say, you know, our programs are massively underfunded. Yeah, we are underfunded and under attack.
Syria, 85% of the households struggle to make ends meet, where there is protracted conflict, disease outbreaks coupled with mass displacement, and also widespread damaged infrastructure and limited humanitarian access. How's OCHA doing?
It's another tough place to work, and I was there in December and spent a week actually traveling across Syria very soon after the fall of the Assad regime, to try and see how we could help. We need to clear mines. We're doing a lot to clear those mines so people can return to their areas. I read today that 850,000 Syrians have returned home. We need to rebuild the infrastructure, power, water, the hospitals, roads, so that people can start to rebuild their livelihoods and see some hope. And of course, here as elsewhere, we need the politics to be right, we need inclusive politics, and we need the conflicts to be settled. So our job everywhere, you've got this balance between the humanitarian access, the need for funding, and then the need to get the politics right and end these conflicts and give the Syrian people, in this case, hope of a much better trajectory after decades of misery. So we will stay engaged. I'm looking forward to meeting Syrian colleagues in the coming weeks during the high-level week here in New York, trying to keep that international engagement and attention that we need to really help Syria and Syrian people to lead the recovery of their country.
Time is catching up with us. I have one last question. In Yemen, the Houthis last Sunday raided the offices of WFP and UNICEF in Sana'a and detained 11. This makes the total. And yesterday, actually, they attacked the UNDP offices also in Sana'a. This brings the number of detained Yemenis working for the United Nations to 41. One of them has passed away, unfortunately. How does this affect the work of OCHA and other organizations when the Houthis are shooting themselves in the foot? Because these are the people coming to help you.
I'm furious. And this makes our work much, much harder. You know, we are there on the ground trying to bring life-saving support to the Yemeni people. Food, medicine, you know, the support that they so desperately need. And we're doing it while we're under attack from the de facto authorities in this way. It's completely unacceptable.
How are you going to force them to release the
So we're talking to regional players, we're talking to the de facto authorities. We'll keep the pressure up in every way that we can. I've been on the phone this morning to our special envoy for Yemen, who's doing a great job in leading those negotiations, our humanitarian coordinator on the ground as well. And, you know, we'll keep that pressure up, but it has a huge impact on our ability to save lives.
Tom Fletcher, Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator. We thank you for your insight. We thank you for this interview. And I am in awe of your commitment to helping the needy people all over the world, and especially in my area. Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Very
sir.
good to see you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.